Are video games only for kids? Okay, right off the bat here, I got a spoiler for you. I'm a 30-year-old dude with an entire room and YouTube channel dedicated to video games, so you can guess what my opinion is going to be. But let my argument speak for itself. So here's the thing, this idea that video games are only for kids generally comes from older people who didn't grow up with video games. In their minds, it's something they got for their kids, and therefore, it's a kid's thing. Now, this doesn't mean I think my mom would enjoy playing Sonic if she gave it a chance, but my point is just the perception that's been created. When you think about it, video games are a relatively new form of media when compared to other stuff like movies, music, artwork, etc. These other forms of media have been around long enough that everybody alive has grown up with them, and therefore they've been designed to be for everybody. Okay, so this is an important time for me to point out that there's a distinction between people who think all video games are for kids and people who think games with more family-friendly themes are for kids. One of the biggest things that created this divide came with the introduction of the first PlayStation. This is when video games became a lot more mainstream. I mean, it sold over 100 million units worldwide, and before that, nothing had really even come close. Unless you want to count the Game Boy, but that thing had been out forever and funny enough marketed to adults at one point. Anyways, part of why it was so mainstream is that it was marketed to younger people as well as older people, introducing more mature subject matter. So, by that logic, somebody could say, see, before the PlayStation, games were made for kids. But hold on a second, have you actually played these older games? Most people agree that games were more difficult back then and have gotten easier over time. Sure, there's been exceptions, but that's been the trend overall. So why would more difficult games be more appropriate for kids? Also, why does a game need to have more serious, mature themes and characters for an adult to play it? Let me tell you a quick little story. There was this kid I grew up with who I distinctly remember saying he would only play mature rated games, and I remember thinking that was a super lame thing to say. I mean, we should be playing games because they're good. I would argue it's more mature for somebody to play a game like Mario and be secure enough with themselves to just own the fact that they like it. I mean, who cares what other people think really? Who wants to live a life where you're just trying to be as much of an adult as possible? I mean, what kind of way to live is that? Okay, I'd also like to bring up some of the best developers making these games. For starters, they were all adults, just trying to make the best games they could. There were some really creative people working on these games, and I'd like to think the greatest minds don't limit themselves as far as subject matter is concerned. Let's take Shigeru Miyamoto for example, the creator of games like Mario, Zelda, and Pikmin. It's been well documented that he took inspiration from his childhood when coming up with the ideas for these games. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Fun comes more naturally to children, so it's only fitting that you would look to your child self when trying to create something that is fun. You ever hear the saying, embrace your inner child? Well, it's a saying because it's correct. Part of being a well-balanced human being is embracing your inner child, and one of the best ways to do that is play. Now, there's a lot of different forms of play, but video games are one of them. Of course, the key to doing anything in a healthy way is proper moderation, and incorporating video games as a part of a balanced life will always be the best implementation. We're at a point in time now where lots of parents grew up with video games, and so they can play them with their kids. That's awesome, and talk about a win-win situation. Plus, how are older games going to be remembered if we don't share them with younger generations? Retro gaming probably wouldn't exist the way it does if adults didn't play video games. It's important for adults to play games so that this form of media can have a successful legacy that lives on. Also, I think stuff that's derived from geek or nerd culture is becoming less and less taboo. Just look at how mainstream superhero movies have become. There definitely was a time when that would have been harder to imagine. Alright, so for this week's video, I'd love to hear you share one of your favorite memories of playing video games as an adult. Mine would have to be playing Mario Chase in Nintendo Land with my cousin and his friend. My wife even joined in, and we were screaming and laughing so hard the neighbors wondered what was happening. Alright, so go ahead and share your memory in the comments, and I will see ya in the next video.